What's up? Welcome back to another episode of Zero Mile ADV. If you haven't yet, go to zeromileadv.com. We are in the process of building some truly unique ADV motorcycle dual sport apparel, stuff that you can wear on and off the bike. So definitely go check it out. If you're watching this video when it first comes out, we don't quite have it yet. We are getting close. The site is up though. You can get our free BDR checklist. If you're thinking about doing a BDR, I'm going to do New Mexico in the spring. So that's going to be, or I should say late spring, early summer. So that should be a lot of fun. And if you're watching this at a later date, because you somehow got this video afterwards, check out our clothes. Give us your feedback. Order something. Let us know what could be better. Help us make truly amazing apparel. Be part of the community. And with that, let's get into today's video. Did you know that roughly 60% of all ADV bike drops happen at their local Starbucks? And that statistic raises by another 15% if you're on a BMW GS 1250 or GR 1250. I kid. But today we are going to talk all about those embarrassing moments. We're going to talk about some of my most embarrassing moments, what I've learned from them. This channel is all about new motorcyclists. So if you're new and you're worried about embarrassing yourself, I'm going to talk about my embarrassing moments, what I've learned from them, why you shouldn't be embarrassed. And yeah, so let's get into it. I think the most important thing was for me when I'm starting anything new, and specifically starting motorcycling, like at some point we're all new at something. I actually went skiing today and I was on the lift and we were coming up over the, there's the terrain park. And these kids are going through, and it actually made me think about this today because at this point they weren't very good. They were going off these little jumps and they're kind of flailing and not really they don't look professional by any means, right? Clearly new at skiing. But then it made me think if these kids stick with it, are they going to be doing the huge jumps in a year or maybe 6 months or maybe by the end of the season, right? Depending on how much they practice and how much time they put in. But the interesting thing is that we're all new at some point and we all have to be that little kid that's just not afraid to go off the jump underneath the lift with all the people watching and kind of embarrass yourself in order to get to be the kid who can go off the huge jumps, right? So we all start somewhere. And so I think we're all bound to make beginner or embarrassing mistakes. And so I think the most important thing that I've learned is that a lot of times I'm just cool with being not good and okay with it, and okay with it. I actually got a comment on a video the other day. I mentioned this in another video, but the guy was like, "Are you just not a good writer?" I'm like, obviously. That's what this whole my whole channel's about, is learning how to become a better rider and getting into motorcycles. No, I didn't grow up a motocross rider. So it's pretty new at this whole thing. Although I'm 2 years in, so maybe I'm intermediate at this point, but I would still consider myself relatively new. So I would say probably my earliest moment was everybody tells you when everybody I talk to is you're gonna drop your bike at some point, so practice picking it up. And I was I'm never gonna drop it. I've always had this idea, there in a lot of things, in business and other things. I'm well, if everybody else is doing that, I'm gonna do something different. I'm not doing that. I'm gonna do it a different way, right? I've never been a cold calling salesperson. And when I started one of my companies, I was I'm not cold calling. It just doesn't work, and I hate it. And why do something I hate? There's got to be a better way. And I never cold called, but so many people I talk to, you have to do cold calling if you're going to make it work. You have to cold call. I never cold call, and I made it work, and so far it's still working. So fingers crossed. But with that being said, I was no, I'm not going to drop my bike. It's just not going to happen. I purchased a KTM 1290 Super Adventure S, big bike, right? Weighs 500 pounds. And I had I kitted it out. I got all the cool SW Motec aluminum panniers for it. And I loved it because I could run errands on it. And so I got to ride my motorcycle more. So I went to the local grocery store, and here, if it's busy, at the very front, there's kind of the striped lines. They kind of bare, add additional padding to a parking spot. So it was this striped area next to a cart return at the very front. And so it wasn't blocking a handicap spot, if that's what you're thinking. So it was the cart return was right there, and then it was this striped area, and then it was basically the front of the store. So I parked right there, went in, I got all my stuff, loaded it in my panniers. I'm super excited, I'm getting my stuff on. And I go to just get on the bike and then get ready to back up, and it just starts leaning and leaning and leaning. And next thing you know, it was over. And I'm like at the front of the store. And so it was like, I had told myself I was never going to drop it. And this was my first drop. And it was like in front of like, on a side note, why do they build grocery store or like Target or Walmart parking lots this way? Like if you're a civil engineer and you know the answer to this, where basically it's like all the traffic runs right in front of where everybody has to walk out instead of like diverting traffic around. I don't know, but it's like all the traffic goes right in front of the store. Everybody's coming out. So it's basically, it was like all eyes on me. And one person like look over, oh, are you okay? Is everything good? And I'm like, yeah, I'm good. You know, like shake it off and just like pick it up, get it on the stand and act like nothing had happened. That was probably like my first most embarrassing mistake. And then at that point I was like, dang it, like I dropped it. You know, I'd actually dropped the bike. But then when I got more into off-road, I ended up dropping the bike a lot more. So it's like, and actually like on the Husky, I was out in a new area and I was kind of practicing and I ended up setting the bike down. Not even a big deal. Like nowadays I'm like, yeah, you set it down, not a big deal. But when I first got the bike, I'm like, I'm not dropping this thing. I'm not setting it over. And that was like my first like real big drop, real hit to the ego. And I would say probably the biggest hit to my ego and probably the toughest is on the Colorado BDR. And so if you've seen my other videos, if you've seen my videos about that, like I think the reason this was a real hit to my ego is because I'd been riding so good up to like the final day, which was like through the culminate San Juan Mountains and up over some pretty iconic passes, Cinnamon, Hurricane, California, I think, and then down Corkscrew. And I ended up dropping my bike 4 times that day. And so I went from kind of like having a almost drop, like coming into a corner too fast, like almost think I'm gonna wreck on the first day, to really building my confidence, like really just like having a lot of fun, ripping the bike, you know, especially coming over Hagerman, which was like super rocky and kind of technical, having just like a great day, you know, getting over that, and then coming into the Colorado BDR. And it was tough because you know, you've been riding with this group of people and it's like, yeah, I want to be, you know, I want to show that I'm as good as you. And again, it's just like, for me, I just have to take the ego out of like, who cares, you know? In my first drop, I was coming up, we were climbing up Cinnamon Pass and I came around too tight and it was just like a lot of embedded rock and I got stuck and the bike stalled and it fell over and I was like, dang it. You know, I had gone this whole BDR and this is the last day without dropping my bike and I dropped my bike and I was like, well, you know, I told myself, this is not going to happen again. And sure enough, like, did it again and did it again. And the thing is that it was like, you know, the guy who's kind of like doing the sweep, Chip, super awesome rider. You know, it's like you want to impress him. You're like, here's a guy who's been riding a lot and it's like, I can do this. Like, I'm good. I'm okay. Like, I'm okay riding bike. I'm okay riding motorcycles. And I dropped. That was the first time. Second time wasn't really my fault so much. It was. It actually was my fault because this guy, you know, he's parked on the right and I kind of came up behind him. He had no idea it was there. He tried coming back in the lane, pushed me off and I fell. So that was the second time. And then the third time, this was a little bit unique. And this situation was a bit unique the third day, that day. So it's like, I dropped it the second time. The second time I dropped it, side note, wasn't so embarrassing because like, another guy, Don, he had wrecked pretty hard. And so he actually needed some like actual attention and like he had hit his head pretty hard. And I kind of went into that in the Colorado BDR video, so check that out. But so kind of all eyes were off of me at that point and I could kind of just pick the bike up and keep going. But then at that point, my nerves were kind of rattled, right? It's like you wrecked the second time. And then the third time we get to the top, I think it's like Hurricane Pass is what it's called. Or California, one of the two. I always get them mixed up. And it's kind of this sharp left hand and it's like a steep drop off. And for some reason, like I just like whipped the bike out from underneath me and it just slid down. And again, it was like everybody was going by. So it was like all eyes are on me because it's the only way down. And I was like, oh man. And now at this point, like I'm just frustrated. I'm like, what the heck am I doing here? Like, why do I, like, it just seems like on stupid stuff. And then, so we're getting up that, and then the last time is we went for lunch, and Ophir, everybody's like, Ophir's a nightmare. I've talked about how Ophir Pass is a bit of a nightmare, but I'm like, I'm doing it. Like at this point, I'm like, I'm committed. I could have stayed and not done it, but I was like, I'm doing it. Like I'm really nervous about it, but you know, you got to do things that make you nervous. So I go to do it, and the first thing was like the backside of over was easy. So I was like ripping up it, having a time like, oh, this is great, you know? And then you start coming down, start coming down the other way. So again, if you're gonna do the Colorado BDR, you'd be climbing up it if you're doing the traditional route, but we were going north to south. And we come, like, we're about to get started, and all of a sudden, for some reason, like, a rock hits me, and I whiskey throttle the bike, and I basically just dump it into the side of the freaking mountain. And I was like, and that was like the 4th time. I'm like, man, I've dropped my bike 4 times today. Like, how much more can I get beat up? Little did I know, like, and this was probably even more embarrassing because it was like, now my nerves are really rattled, and I'm seeing this scree field that we have to go through, and it is so loose and shaky. And I had like a really scary moment earlier in the day, and so now like I have that replaying through my mind, and I'm like, how am I going to get through this? And so basically, poor Chip had to like babysit me all the way down to like catch up with everyone. And everybody basically waiting on me because I was going so slow that day, getting through that scree field. And a lot of it definitely was mental. Like, I think had I not had the most scariest moment, which we're talking about in a minute, I probably would have been okay through there. I probably would have carried a little bit more speed, just stayed to the right and kind of just skipped through all that stuff, and it probably would have been better. But after dropping my bike like 4 times, and the hard thing is like I want to go back this summer and ride it again, but I know like once I get up there, like that story is gonna be replaying through my mind and be like, oh, here we go. You know, I'm gonna be so nervous like going through there. Anyways, so that was tough because it was, you know, in front of everybody. The scariest moment, I think, you know, those were just embarrassing because it was like people are watching. I've now dropped my bike 4 times in one day, and now I'm going super slow down this freaking mountain, and everybody's having to wait on me, and basically ego is crushed. I'm like, I suck at riding motorcycles. You guys thought I was okay at riding motorcycles. I'm actually terrible. And the thing is like I could complain about like the bike size. Well, I was like, I'm on a big bike, and all these other guys are on small bikes. But like two guys were on. One was on a GSA, like the biggest freaking GS you can get with the bigger tank. And another guy was on a GS, and they had no problems just cruising through that stuff. So it's like definitely not the bike. It's all about my skills. But I think the scariest moment was coming down Corkscrew. So I think going up Corkscrew would be pretty fun because it's like it's steep, but it's much easier going uphill steep than it is going downhill, in my opinion. But I was like trying to figure out how to just like modulate my speed, and I was really afraid to use a lot of front brake because I thought I would wash the front end out on that steep stuff, which would have been really bad. And looking back on it, I should use far more front brake. But like, yeah, coming down Corkscrew, I had this moment where it was like the rear tire locked up, and then like I started sliding sideways. I let off. I'm picking up a lot of speed, and it's just a big drop to the left, and I'm like, how am I going to get the bike under control? And I think by instinct I just like did like the Moto Jitsu thing. You don't just like grip the front brake, you just slowly grab it, and I just like got the bike under control, going a little fast, and I just slowly gripped that front brake and applied the rear pressure. I have no idea how to mentally put those things together in that moment, because it was like, as my good friend Barry says, total code brown moment at that point. And then I had to stop, and I was like, because at that point it was like I was about to just launch the bike off the freaking side of the cliff, and there's no way I was going with the bike, right? Like, I'm gonna let it go, and I'm ditching on the road, and I'll figure out how to get down. But if I went with the bike, it would have not been pretty. That was probably the scariest moment. So I had that moment, and then we went and had lunch, and then we went and did Ophir, and so it was like that scary steep moment was like still running through my head, and I just didn't have the confidence to control the bike going downhill, and so it completely crushed my ego. Like, it was just. And again, it was like, then I was going really slow the rest of the way, and like everybody's having to wait for me. And so it was like pretty much the second half of the last day on the Colorado BDR, like everybody's having to wait for me. It was just like, it was an embarrassing moment. You don't want to be that guy that everybody's waiting on. Like, if I was in everybody else's position and I was really good at riding and I was waiting, like I wouldn't care. I'd be like, oh, I'm having fun. Cool, man. We're like, you made it down safe. Did you have fun? Cool. We're going to go. But in your head, you just think like everybody's like, this guy, right? Like, we're still waiting on this guy. He's terrible, you know? Like, so it's like when you're the person like who, you know, you tell yourself a million different stories of what actually is going on, which probably isn't the truth.
Damn, I got my ass kicked.
Good job.
Whew.
You made it, huh?
Damn.
That was pretty tough on that even farther down with those.
Yeah.
Here comes the GP.
But I think those are probably my most embarrassing, because like the first one is in front of everybody, dropped the bike the first time, and then the second one, it was like I'm building confidence, and it was like I was just knocked off my high horse, and people are waiting on me, and poor Chip's having to babysit me down these mountains, and he's a good rider, and you're like, you want to impress him because you're like, I want to ride with this guy again. He's awesome, So it's like all these things going through your head. And yeah, those were probably the worst moments for me. But I'm here and I'm still riding. So I think the short of it is, and I've done this with most things. Like I've tried a lot and done a lot of different things in my life, and I love like doing new things. And initially when I was younger, I hated it. Like I hated being the new guy. Like I didn't want people to know I was new at something. Like I wanted them to think I knew what I was doing. Like I'm okay, I'm good. But mentally just becoming comfortable with this idea of like, I'm not very good at it. I'm new and I'm trying. And just like being honest about that, and then like seeing the reaction from people, oh, okay, cool. And then a lot of times people want to help you, right? Unlike my first group ride motorcycle experience, which was like, hey, I'm new. Is this ride cool for me? Yes, we're gonna ride like bad out of hell, like even technically breaking the law. Like, I mean, anyways, I could go on. That's for that other video. You can go check that one out. But in most situations, I feel like if you're new at something and you tell people you're new, like they're going to be pretty cool with it. They're going to want to help you. And so it's like, don't worry about your ego, right? Like the ego is all inside your head. I have no idea what those guys were thinking, like having to wait for me. And I'm like, I just got my butt kicked, like I'm not that good. You guys crushed it. But again, it's like I tell myself those stories and they're not even true. Like Don skipped out on that part. He didn't want to do it, right? Or Dwight, I should say. And yeah, so you tell yourself stories. You don't know the actual truth. Let your ego go. Have fun. Do something cool. That's why I made that joke with the statistics, because in case you haven't watched this, like the statistics at the beginning weren't true. I just made those up. But it's like, hey, if your adventure is riding to the local Starbucks on your bike and it gets you on your bike and you have fun and that's an adventure to you, I'm all about it. Who cares, right? We don't all have to be professional. Like I don't have to be the next, I don't even know, like Chris Birch or any of these guys. I just want to go out, have fun. Once the fun meter goes down, what the heck is the point, right? We're not making money doing this stuff. Anyways, if you have made it this far, subscribe, hit the like button, all that good stuff. Really helps the channel grow. I know it's a little slower right now. It's the winter. We're not really thinking about motorcycles because our motorcycles might be wrapped up. But spring is just right around the corner. We're going to start riding. We're going to have some new clothes on the horizon. Check out zeromileadv.com. And until next time, stay safe out there.